this time, a gentleman that needs very little introduction in this area, I'm sure. He's a graduate of Shikellamy High School, Juliana College, and he has a Master's of Arts in Military Studies from the American Military University in 2000. He's a past commander in General John F. Hartranft's Camp Number 15 in the Sons of the Union Veterans of the Civil War, as well as the General J.P.S. Gobin Camp 503 of the SUVCW. He's a past president of the Susquehanna Valley Civil War Roundtable and a past president of the Board of Directors at Priestley Forsyth Memorial Library. He has published more than 500 newspaper and magazine articles on history and heritage, many of them published in our local newspaper, The Daily Item. Mr. Deppen is a recipient of the American Legion of Americanism and the Oratorial Medical Community Service Award from the Daughters of the American Revolution, the Citizen of the Year Award from the Benevolent and Protective Order of the Elks, and a citation of meritorious and conspicuous conduct for the Military Order of Purple Heart, and a well-known and well-active veterans advocate. At this time, I'd like to present Mr. John Deppen.
Thank you, Dick. Thank you all for having me here this evening. When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give to me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live on in your eyes and not your mind. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands, by letting bodies touch bodies, and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. Merritt Malloy wrote this poem, a poem entitled Epitaph. The idea of an epitaph is not something we often contemplate. We rarely see them on headstones anymore. An epitaph signals an ending, a finality, a last message to those left behind and to future generations. An epitaph is often connected to a traumatic loss. Everyone gathered here tonight, except perhaps for the very young, has within their individual memory a date indelibly etched by trauma or sadness. These dates appear on our calendars year after year, inexorably. And there are times when we wish we could avoid them. But these dates are an essential part of our individual identities. They are personal to us. For me, that date is January 18th, 1978. My father, Bob Deppen, died that night. He had a heart attack shoveling snow. He was 42. I was 9. His death forever changed the course of my life. September 11th, 2001 is indelibly etched on our national memory, our collective memory. It was deeply traumatic. It was and remains profoundly sad. It forever changed the course of our nation's life. Doctors and neurologists still work to understand how and why trauma imprints itself so readily and so vividly on our brains. My father is dead more than 43 years now, and I still remember so many of the details of that night. The sound of my uncle's voice telling me, "John, your dad didn't make it." The feel of my mother's coat against my cheek as I hugged her. The light over the stove in our kitchen that revealed the shock and grief on my family's faces. 20 years now separate us from that terrible, terrifying morning in September, when many of us were riveted to our television screens or our car radios by unthinkable reports of fire and death. We remember where we were. We remember how we felt. We remember wondering what it all meant. We remember the uncertainty, the deeply shaken, unsettled feeling created by such sudden, violent, evil acts. In the journey toward recovery from trauma, in the quest for healing, the truth matters. There must be an honest reckoning with the facts. In my case, my father's death, though sudden and unexpected, did not happen in a vacuum. His father had died in his 40s from a heart attack. He had experienced a heart murmur in college. He was not too fond of going to the doctor. My father was not to blame for his death, but there were signs of trouble long before January 18th, 1978. When it comes to the national trauma of September 11th, 2001, it seems that with each passing year, we become more separated and more isolated from the facts of what happened that day. So much so that the survivors and loved ones left behind must now cope with people who believe the wildest and most disturbing notions about September 11th. As a student at Juniata College in the late 1980s, I completed a research paper on people who believed that the Holocaust, the Nazi genocide of European Jews during World War II, never happened, that it was a hoax. At the time, those people were on the fringe. Their books and other reading materials were hard to locate. There was no YouTube or Facebook or Instagram. Holocaust deniers were easily dismissed. Now, Holocaust denial is so pervasive, so insidious, that 16 European nations and Israel felt compelled to pass laws to make it illegal to deny the historical truth of what happened to 6 million Jews at the hands of Hitler's henchmen. Today, there are people who believe, truly believe, that what we witnessed on September 11th was nothing but a smoke and mirrors hoax. I wish that these people were on the fringe, but they are not. They have, in fact, been in every comment section of every online news story related to September 11th for at least the past week or so. I know because I've read what they wrote. Some people believe that the Pentagon was not hit by a hijacked aircraft, but by a cruise missile. Some people believe that Flight 93 was not brought down by a breathtaking act of courage on the part of the passengers, but by a U.S. fighter jet. One individual, once a chief economist at the U.S. Labor Department, believes that no planes at all were used in the attacks on September 11th. There is a bit of wisdom widely circulated on social media that says, "It's okay for you to believe what you believe. It's not okay for you to insist everyone else believe what you believe." I get that. I understand that. I agree with that to an extent. When it comes to what we are here tonight to remember, however, the truth matters. The facts matter. Those wild notions are not legitimate alternative theories of the crime. Those are not rational points of view that deserve a place in the public square. Those ideas chip away at our national memory. Those theories exacerbate our national trauma. They distort our history and dishonor our dead. We need to say that out loud. And if we cannot say it on this day of all days, when can we say it? Yes, the attacks on September 11th were the result of a conspiracy. It was a conspiracy that originated in a well-funded international terrorist network led by Osama bin Laden. Of the 19 terrorists who hijacked the 4 commercial airliners that caused so much death and destruction that morning, 1 was from Egypt, 1 was from Lebanon, 2 were from the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, and 15 of the 19 terrorists were from Saudi Arabia, our ally. Those are facts. They are not in dispute. 2,977 people died on September 11th. Citizens from more than 70 countries perished that day. It happened on our soil, but it was an attack on the free world. That is why the World Trade Center was one of the targets. Of those who died on September 11th, 343 were New York City firefighters, and 71 were law enforcement officers. Those are facts. They are not in dispute. Since September 11th, 2001, more than 33,000 people have been treated for illnesses and injuries related to the attacks, including more than 4,000 cases of cancer. The Uniformed Firefighters Association of Greater New York reports that 170 firefighters died due to illnesses related to the attacks, and that roughly 1 in 8 firefighters who were at ground zero in New York City have developed cancer. Those are facts. They are not in dispute, not by reasonable people. On the night my father died, my mother called us from the hospital to say that he was okay and would be home in 3 days. That was the initial report from his evaluation in the emergency room. Something catastrophic happened, however. When the doctor told my mother the awful news, he got on his knees. Mom was in shock and said, "I guess I'll take him home." Dad never came home, of course. On the night of September 11th, 2001, nearly 3,000 people never came home after our national catastrophe. The entire country was on its knees that day. I think, in many ways, all of us have spent the last 20 years trying to find our way home. Home is where we can rest. Home is where we can heal. Home is where we feel safe from the dangers of the world. Sometimes it's hard to find home through the smoke of falsehoods. It's hard to find home in the ashes of our preconceived notions. It's hard to find home in the rubble of the world that once was and will never be again. It's hard to find home when home doesn't look the same, or sound the same, or feel the same as it once did. However, we are a people of hope. We are a people of great promise and possibility. We are a people of courage and compassion. We are Americans. All of us. May it ever be so. The one account that stood out for me when I looked over the historical accounts of September 11th came from Lieutenant Bill Keegan of the Port Authority Police Department. Lieutenant Keegan remembered, "This country came together. We found that what makes us human together is that people hurt the same way. No matter what your political affiliation is, what your color is, what your religion is, seeing how we came together and seeing the goodness of people, I think that's something we need to take forward," Lieutenant Keegan said. My friends, our epitaph is not yet written. Let us not be its authors. Hold fast to the truth about September 11th, 2001, about your own individual traumas and losses, about all things. All things. The truth is our constant northern star. The truth may be beautiful or hideous, reassuring or unsettling, hot as fire or cold as ice. But it is still the truth. And come what may, the truth will light our way home. Thank you.